Okay, so left off that he was explaining how, in addition to what he said previously, that he explained in order to address the idea of how is it that the Havaya and Elikim are kul echad, that the aspect of divine revelation and the aspect of divine concealment or imposing limitations, how is it all one? So he explained it in terms of using the analysis of the creative process inside a person, in the Keifus HaNefesh, that using, particularly in the Keif of producing ideas, of the Keif of Seichel, intellect. So he explained that just we said that there's a source for Seichel from which the self produces ideas. That's called the Koyach HaMaskil, the power that produces individual Seichel ideas. And he explained that just as it has a capacity to produce, it also has built in a capacity to impose structure, to impose limits in order to have an idea that has clear boundaries and clear limits, how far it goes, and then when it makes sense, when it applies, when it doesn't apply, when it's useful, when it's not useful. So he used that as an analogy to explain that the concept that Lamaila, we say that just like the Eibishter has Koyach B'Bilti Balgvul, the Eibishter has the power to express infinity, so too he has a Koyach B'Gvul. He has the power to express in finite ways. So the fact that it's all one thing, it's all one source, that creative process, which is the infinite creative possibilities, and that which imposes the limits and the focus that it should be specific creations, that is all coming from the same source. So it's really Havaya and Elikim Akul Echad from the perspective of the creator in the creative process. And he said, he gave a marshal that when self is relating to self, there's no, he said the idea that self doesn't cover up self from self. So it's not, so you can't use your hand to cover your head in order to make a bracha, because it's all part of you, it's all part of the self. So within self, there's no, you can't talk about the idea of kalim and covering up, or the Shem Elikim, concealing and covering up, because that's all part of self, that's all part of the creative process within self. But he said that he's going to explain, it requires additional explanation, because you're saying that they are performing two opposite functions here. You're saying that the Shem, that when it comes to the Shem Yud Give Up, the Shem Elikim, in a very specific context of a Koyach HaMaskil, that the Koyach HaMaskil has the power to produce ideas endlessly, but also has the power to be magbil, to impose limitation on the idea. Okay, we get that, but when you're talking about the names of Havaya and Elikim, the function of Elikim is to cover up. The function of Elikim is to conceal. So how are you saying that it's concealing and not concealing at the same time? So he started getting more into the idea of not just the process that goes on, the creative process that goes on within self, but even the creative process in communicating an idea and a concept from a teacher who's so far beyond the level of the student, and the ideas and the way he understands the ideas are so far beyond the level of the student, that the teacher has to, within himself, he has to sort of shut down, restrain his intellect, then he has to take the idea that he wants to communicate and package it in order to communicate it on a level that that student can understand. And he explained that this is the idea that we find that the Chazal tell us that a person should always teach a student in a way of b'derech tzara, in a way of in a short, compact, brief way. So he explained that using the model of the Mishnah and the Gemara, the idea that everything that's in the Gemara, that the Gemara is discussing and the commentaries of the Gemara are discussing and so on, are really all contained in the Mishnah. So it's really all packed in there in a very condensed form. So it's not that when we say to make it short, to shorten it, we don't mean to give the student something different than what the teacher has. We mean that the mashpia should give it all, but to pack it all in a very condensed form, a very constricted form, so that the student should be able to receive it. And he said, now he's going to proceed to how it's not even a concealment for the makabel. But right now he wants to show you more that in the process, and now before we explain how the mashpia within himself, the chacham within himself, how his refining ideas and imposing limits and definitions on ideas is not concealment for himself, within himself, but he even in the mashpia communicating ideas. So now he's already not just expressing himself to himself, he's already expressing these ideas to others. So now there's already makabel involved. And we said that he has to cover certain things up in order for the makabel to be able to receive it, otherwise it'll just blow the mind of the makabel. And yet, even when he does that, and he now packages it in such a way that he can communicate it to outside of self, it's still, for himself, there's no concealment. Because he sees in the mashal, in the analogy, so he said, besides for packaging it in a brief way, when it's a more abstract idea and concept, he has to put it into a mashal. A mashal is a separate topic, but it gives the person a handle that from that he can extract what the nimshal is. So here, the mashpia is giving over this very deep abstract idea, and he says he's putting it all in there, but he's putting it in, communicating in the form of a mashal. So it's not just to someone outside of him; it's foreign to the idea itself. It's also a garment to the idea itself. It's not, and yet, so it's covering up. It's a garment; it covers up. It's going to somebody else who's not going to get it the way it's covering it up for the other person, and yet for the mashpia, it's not covering it up. Because he not only does he put the whole idea into the mashal, he sees the whole depth of the idea in the mashal itself, in every detail of the mashal. He's able to see the whole depth of the idea. So that's where we sort of stop before he wants to give an analogy for that. So he says that that's where we're up to. Derech mashal ha'aretz hagashmi. Like, for example, the physical Earth, planet Earth, as we know it, who mashal l'bchinas malchus shel hamayla, is a mashal in Kabbalah. It's a mashal for the aspect of Hashem's kingship of malchus up above. Hainu. So what about the Earth as a mashal? So he explains different aspects that's brought in Kabbalah. Chassidus allude to the role and the function of Sfiras HaMalchus. So one of them, Hainu Aviyusoi, it's literally thickness, but it means it's more, it's density, that it's in fact different than most of the rest of the universe. It's dense. The current understanding of gravity is that in fact is what causes gravity, is the density. Kaderusai, it's the fact that it's circular, it's round. The kaivdai, and its weightiness, it's the fact that it's mass. So this would be more connected to, they say gravity is a force, but weightiness here in this sense means the fact that it pulls down, it's heavy, so it's and the fact that it grows plant life. This is a marshal for the aspect of Malchus of Atzilus, that it brings into existence created beings in the lower worlds of Bri, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, from nothingness to somethingness. And there was something that did not exist previously. Sphere of Malchus makes it exist, causes it to exist in the lower worlds, as explained elsewhere. So it's not something that he's just using it as an analogy, so just Bekitza Nimratz. So basically, the idea of the density of it has to do with that every one of the kaychas, there's the kayach as it's part of me, and it's about me relating to reality. But it's my experience. So let's say I love someone. That's my experience, my feeling. I feel love towards that person. Okay, I feel love towards that person. What is it about love that makes that now that love should be able to find expression to the other person? How can that love, that's inside me, it's something inside, how could that love find expression to the other person? How could it, it's me relating to the other person, but it's all me. How does it get past me to the other person? How does that person sense my feelings? I could try to do it through speech, I could do it through certain behaviors, actions, or whatever it is, but how, so what it is that within every one of the kaychas, there is the element of that at the, so to speak, at the lowest level of that kayach is sort of where it gets dense. It sort of gets more solid. It's just a feeling, isn't it? It has within it the capacity to sort of solidify. When there's some, it's all again we're talking about setup, but this solidity aspect, this element of solidification, is now there's something here that can go further. As long as it's just all my own feeling and my own this, it's just me being me. It's not, yes, I'm feeling about you, but it's still me being me.
Your world.
So it's, so what?
It's in your world, and now it's becoming in its
the solidity aspect of it, the fact that it sort of solidifies at the bottom.
It's objective.
It means that there's something here that can, it has some sort of thingness to it. There's something here. Now we can talk about the love, my love for you as a thing. That's now what we can do something with this thing. What we can do with it depends. But now there's a thing here I can communicate to you, something. I'm not trying to just tell you that I'm having this experience. I want to communicate the love itself. I don't just want to inform you. By the way, you know how I feel about you? I'm actually having a loving feeling about you right now. So you might be interested to know. That's not what's happening. The love itself is trying to get across, not just the fact that I'm having an experience. So the same thing with an idea, right? The same thing in each thing. The fact that it sort of solidifies to the point that now there's a thing here that can be communicated, that can be shared, that can be acted upon, that can be, that thingness is what is in, it's when the abstract, within the abstract, has at the bottom end of the abstract range, there's some level of concretization. It's now This epis shaykh to being more concrete. So that the earth is that's what the earth is. The earth is tangibility, solidity.
The Gefet of
concrete.
the olive oil.
What?
The Gefet of the olive oil. The yeast of the wine.
I'm saying it's sort of now there's something here.
You're saying there's
So in
an
Spheres
objective
HaMalchus, the fact that
existence,
it's what Spheres HaMalchus is that at that thing where all of those different traits become more concrete. Now Spheres HaMalchus, so using the analogy of a real king. How does a king according to Torah, not a king according to Goyish history. A king according to Torah, the king according to Torah is that all of his seichel and all of his midas, all of his higher faculties are channeled into he's able to take from all of his own inner powers and use that to govern a nation. So he's able to lead the people with his, but it's not about him sharing his experience with them. It's not sharing his mind, sharing his heart with them. It's about running the show. Yeah. So yes, he has this deep and powerful connection that's going on, but what's coming across, what he has here is now taken from his wisdom, knowledge, emotional depth, and his own inner drives that are far beyond the regular person's, and therefore he's able to sort of contain within him an entire nation. But it's sort of the bottom line of all of his inner powers. It's the bottom line of that now can be used to govern and to run other people, guide other people in how to run their lives. So similarly, then he says also, kadrusa. Kadrusa is the circular nature of it. The circular nature of it, that Spheres HaMalchus, so to speak, is a container, and its source is in the sphere of Kesser, whatever. But it's not Spheres HaMalchus is in a way all-encompassing of all the kefes. Let's using the analogy of the power of speech, the Spheres HaMalchus, or even an actual king. The power of speech can express anything you put into it. It doesn't have, I can only express ideas. I can only express explanations. I can only express this feeling. I can express. The power of speech can contain it all and express it all. And not only that, the power of speech has no problem containing opposites. Internally, feeling opposites it can be a problem, but expressing opposites, saying opposites, I could say opposites, not a problem. It's not because it in a sense it contains everything that came before it. It itself is less lamigamer klum. It has nothing to say for itself. The power of speech has nothing to communicate. Has nothing to say. It's a power. It's not a tool. Yeah, but it can take everything in and then direct it out to each place to what it's supposed to be. And kaifta is the weightiness of it. The weightiness of it is here is more the solidity in the sense of it's not just a thing, or so. If you wanted to break it down, you could say that what we said is more concrete aspect of it is the fact that it actually would relate more to thought. The fact that there's a thing that I can communicate. I already formulated as a thing, and there's something here that I can communicate. The circular nature of it is, again, the king also has to encompass his entire nation. He has to encompass it, including people who are opposites in many ways from each other. He has to be able, and that would relate more to the power of speech. And then there's the weightiness, not just the solidity, but the heaviness of it. The heaviness of it is that's the real earthy existence, the real yeshus of it, the real, that it could take on actual concrete form, would be relate more to the power of action, that literally to something to act upon it. And the fact that it's matzmiach tzmachim is that it grows and it produces things. Is again, the earth doesn't decide what to produce or what not to produce. It has to do whatever you put into it, the seed, whatever you put into it, that's what it's going to produce. But the fact that it's sort of bringing, and the way it produces it is that first the thing decomposes, the seed decomposes. There's nothing here. Now, when you have nothing, now we can first have something. So it's literally this process of creating something from nothing. So all of that is a mashal. Because again, in Bia would be Bria would be already where what we call Afshari Amatzias. Bria is already this idea of COVID. It's already, there's something here. It's not yet taking on any form. It's not yet taking on any specific. There's something here. Yetzira is it's already taking on form, but it's not yet fully expressed. It's not yet. It has all the ingredients. It's not yet, but there's. And then Asiya would be more okay. The Asiya Gash is more. They have the actual physical, tangible reality, but it's all coming from this capacity of the Sphira. So the Sphira, it's a mashal for the Sphira of Malchus. That's what it is. The one earth that sustains everyone and everything on it, and it produces the food for everyone, everything on it. It contains every kind of climate and every kind of and it's all coming from one source. So, but he's just using that all as a mashal and an imshal. So here's an example of a mashal and an imshal chassidus. So he nehu this chacham gadol. He sees who roya ba'aretz hagashmi kol prati animshal the malchus datzilus. He sees when he looks at the earth, when he looks at the physical earth as we know it, he sees in it all the details of the nimshal of malchus datzilus. So he says in parentheses, "B'roya yideze ech ein aretz hagashmi davar nifrit klal leze davar mifnei atzmei." And that, and he also sees through this that the physical earth, as we know it, is not something that's separate. It's not disconnected. To be a thing unto itself, from its root and its source, he also sees in it that how the mashal is not just a mashal for a nimshal, but that the earth itself is nothing more than this divine power manifesting in physical form. It's not something separate from its source. It is its divine source in the most physical form that took on a physical form. There's not something separate. It's not something disconnected from its source in Malchus Datzilus. It is that same. It is a manifestation of Malchus Datzilus rather than
because it's in a disconnect. Datzilus is a higher world.
That's why
it looks like that.
The infinite power could also make that it should come in a form of a geshem. To take the most loftiest spiritual realities and manifest in the form of a geshem.
But it's the geshem is like the mashal of the bleedwool that's the mile.
Right, but it's more than just the mashal because he sees the whole nimshal in the mashal. Therefore, when he looks at the earth, he actually sees that it's not a thing for itself. Because to him, it's not just an intellectual exercise. I use this to understand that. It's a
manifestation.
I see how this is just that in this form.
Is there any place where it says that Havaya Elokim Kol Echad is also Legabe us, or just Mitzad?
Yes, this is here. He's very much going.
Because right now this is only Mitzad.
He's going to continue. It's going to take some time till we get there, but that's what he's trying to say. Havaya Elokim Kol Echad Legabe us, and that's our main avodah in this world. and it fully comes Begilui in the time of Mashiach.
As of now, it's only by the Chacham.
We haven't gotten to it yet. So he says, he's actually just at the bottom of his page is when he's going to start explaining that. So he says, because in truth, the marshal and the nimshal are really all one thing. When it comes to Elikus and Mashalom for Elikus, we don't say that for any other ideas and concepts. When it comes for Mashalom and Torah for Elikus, the marshal and the nimshal are really all one thing, except that this is the physical form of that reality, and this is this godly form. It's godly, more abstract, spiritual form. And that is why he sees all of the details of the nimshal in the marshal, because he started with the nimshal. He used the marshal to express the nimshal, so he sees all of the details of the nimshal in the marshal. So now this is seeing godliness with the senses, because before he was seeing godliness with the mind. It was all abstract. He's seeing godliness with his mind. Once he now dressed it up in the mashal and he sees it all in the mashal, so he sees godliness with his senses, with his eyes, because he sees the mashal, and the mashal is not something else. The mashal is only the physical manifestation of the nimshal, and he sees in that all the details of the nimshal. So he's seeing little godliness with his senses. So he adds in parentheses, which I referred to at the end of the last year, this is the chiddush, that this koyach hagbola accomplishes within the mashpia. We only said that how he has to do this whole exercise in order to convey the idea to the makar. But what's in it for him? It's just an exercise in bringing things down. So what's the chiddush for him? The fact that he dresses up his seichel in garments and concealments, by the fact that he has to now use these analogies, he has to use these mashalim. He dresses up the idea, and those mashalim, that makes it for him that he sees how it could, the Indian, he sees the godly idea, mamish, literally, on the sensory level. He looks at the physicality of the marshal and he says, he sees the elikus in it. So, as famously the Rebbe referred to on a number of occasions, not something that he touched on frequently, but over the years there were little mentions here and there, that a Rebbe, a Neshama d'Atzilus, or whatever, in each place, a different language that he used, the Neshamas of Nunayama, the Neshamas of the hidden worlds that are like creatures under the sea rather than creatures on the face of the earth. But the Rebbe explained that as hard as we have to work to relate to godliness, a Rebbe that the Neshama Vatzilas has to work as hard, if not more, to relate to the fact that there's an actual physical world there. Because to him, godliness is so tangible and real. So that's the real yesh. Everything else is ayin. Everything else is nothing. So in order to be able to relate, so that is considered a mila in the fact that he has to bring it down and convey the messages in these gashmistic terms, that actually accomplishes, so to speak, something in the mashpia, that he's able to, that he sees godliness not only in its pure abstract form, but also in its most tangible form. In fact, it goes so far that there's a number of stories. One of the famous stories is with the Rebbe Marash when he was a young man, that he was born, his father was already much older. He was a lot younger than his older siblings. when he was a young man, he once, the Chassidim was sitting in the Beis Medrash, and the Rebbe Marash once came into the Beis Medrash, and they realized that he's not seeing anything, that he's not seeing the physical world. That he's sort of just like seems to be like stumbling around, and he's clearly not seeing what's going on in the room. So they ran to his father, to the Tzemach Tzedek, and they said to him, it looks like he took off somewhere, and he's not, So he said they should bring him to him. So the story goes that he said first he showed him. He said he asked him, "Do you see me?" He said, "Yeah." Then he took out a handkerchief. His not any handkerchief, his handkerchief. He took out his different object that belonged to him that he used in his Avodah Hashem. Whatever. Then slowly he like brought him back down to earth, and that he could get. He told him that he has to learn. I don't remember 500 maamarim that talk about Yehuda Tator, like some wild number of maamarim that talk about the divine unification in the lower reality. Because he has to be able to get back grounded in this world. But so for the mashpia, in this case, again, the kind of mashpia Mekabel is talking about here, we have no other example of that, like other than the Rebbe and teaching Chassidus. We don't have any other. She says, "Nimtze shel gabe mashpia ein kan shum helen b'hester klal kim gabe mekabel helen b'hester." The bottom line is, we said that legabe the mashpia, there's no helen b'hester at all. Not only when it's going on inside him, this process, but even when he brings it out and he expresses it and he passes it along and he dressed it up and he ready put it out there. Even then, there's still, and he did it all through a process of concealments, an internal concealment, and then a concealment of the depth and the inner light of the idea, and then he dressed it up in a muscle. All of those things that he did, for him, even after it's out there, there's no concealment for him at all. So that's an added to what we had before, the process as it is inside him. Now he takes it to the next. I'm sorry. So he's still explaining. It's only the way we're holding now is it's only relative to the Mekabel that there's concealment and hiddenness. This is of course what's revealed to the Mekabel is only the external aspect of the seichel, but the innermost and essence of the seichel is hidden from him. Now he goes and takes it a step further. Now he's going to take off. Because this is really what's going to be negeya to us, because we are, to whatever extent, we're committed to it, we invest in it, we are the Mekabel. If we show up, and we put in the time and effort. But the fact is, he says, that the truth is that even relative to the Mekabel, it's not a true concealment. Because still in all, yes, it's through it's constricted and it's covered up and it's dressed up in a mashal, but still in all, through this it shines for him and is revealed to him the revelation of the light of the seichel. The lights go on in his mind. The lights went on. That's what happened when he received it. The light of seichel. Because without the constriction and without the concealment, he would not get the light of the seichel at all. Now, as we said before, that if the mashpia would reveal to the entire depth of his wisdom as it is by him, his senses would become completely confused and overwhelmed. He would get nothing. If he get the lights going on, he'd be in a state of confusion. And through the constriction and the concealment, it shines from the light of seichel. So for him, he can't say it's pure concealment, because it's a really, it's about concealment. It's not what it's about. It's still about revelation, even relative to the Makab. It's about revelation because now he gets the light. The lights go on upstairs in his head. But he says, okay, but we're still saying, fine, you're getting this very limited, yes, for you the lights went on. But it's a concealment, at least in the sense that you're getting, you're only getting a little taste of the light. You're not getting anything close to the real thing, because you're not even shy to getting the real thing. So that's still not 100% saying that there's no concealment. But first he wanted to establish that it's not a concealment for the mashpia within himself. It's not a concealment for the mashpia even when he brings it down to the level of the makabel and expresses it outside of himself. And in fact, not only is it not in fact, it opens up for him a whole new perspective, because now he sees the idea in the mashal. He sees the idea in the physical. It actually, for him, it's even less concealment than before, because the physical is not even a concealment to him. So then he said that even now he's going relative to the makabel. It's not really concealment, because really for him the experience is that he learned something new. His mind opened up. The lights went up. He got something out of it. But he adds that besides for that, but in truth, it's not only that he gets the external aglima ray of the seichel, but the actual depth, innermost depth of the seichel of the mashpia shines forth and is revealed to the makabel through this hashpah that is being mashpia to him. Where do you see that? Shari Amru Rabbi Seinu Zuchreinu Mubracha, that the sages said, Loikoin Inish Adaiti Didabe Ad Arboin Shnin, that a person is not koim Adaiti Didabe until Arboin Shnin, until 40 years. So we have to use language. So we use words, physical words, to describe more abstract ideas. So it literally, if you translated it literally, it would sound like a man doesn't stand on his Rebbe's das until 40 years. But what it means is that he doesn't get it where the Rebbe is coming from until 40 years later.
What's the word-to-word translation? Lo kaim inish. What's kaim?
Einoi oimed. Al das Rabbi. She doesn't stand on. Einoi oimed al das Rabbi. So that's because again we have to use physical terms, but we understand that it means that. Kommt nicht an, as they say in English. He doesn't quite get it. So what's the idea of Rabbi? But after 40 years, he is Aymed. He is Kaim. He does get it.
40 years of age or 40 years
40 years of toil and study. So that's Pirish Daite de Rabbi. What does it mean, Daite de Rabbi? What does he know? What does it mean? He knows the task of his Rebbe. It means after 40 years, he thinks like he has like the Rebbe's mind. No, I know Pneumius v'atzmius kavanos. The innermost essence of his intent. The intent means, in this case, of what he was trying to communicate. That's an intention. There's an end goal, right? In this communication process, it's not just an exercise in giving over ideas. It expands my mind, it expands your mind. It's not just an exercise. There's a point. There's whether it's in halacha, and it's a point to get to know what the halacha l'mais is, what is, or there's the point is to gain understanding and insight, and therefore build a deeper connection through godly ideas with the Eibishter. But so there is, and within each idea itself, there's the previous atzmis kavanos. Yikumayim Razal Gaber Reb Meir shlo yochlu chachamim lamed al V'yodaita. It says by Reb Meir that the chachamim could not stand al V'yodaita. It means they couldn't get it. They couldn't quite get what's he really saying? What's he really saying? He said chayav. He said pater. He said kosher. He said pasul. He said tamei. He said tar. What do you mean you don't really? What do you mean you're not really getting where he's coming? Because he's backing up his debate. He's backing up his position with an idea. So they're not getting, not quite getting where you're going with this. Where's this going? I hear what your bottom line is, and I hear how you got there. I don't quite, trying to work it back, I don't quite get where you're coming from, and where you're trying to get from. Rashi al etzem kavanosei. So Rashi here translated V'yodaita al etzem kavanosei. What his essential intent of what he was trying to convey. So when we say that a person is Aymer al Das Rabbi, he does get to the Das and awareness of his Rebbe at least as it relates to the ideas that he learned from his Rebbe. I know etzem pnimis kavanose. That is talking about that he's aiming at etzem pnimis kavanose, exact what the innermost depth of what he was trying to convey. So sounds good. It sounds, but what is that? How does that work? But it was explained before that even though he's conveying this to the student and giving it over in a condensed, brief fashion, very, very much shortened. Still in all, it's contained within it, albeit in a concealed state, the entire depth of his wisdom. It's only that what is revealed to the Makabel is an aspect of an external glimmer from his wisdom. He's giving him everything. He's not holding anything back. But what's going to come through to the student is only an external illumination. But the Etzem Chachmasa, he gives, the Mashpia gives it to Behelim in a concealed state in the subjects that are covered, and in the Diktukei Tevis, the choice of words, that now he could say, so why did he say it this way? He's trying, there's much more here than and that's why the Mekabel, after he receives the Ashba, and it settles in his mind, he gets it. Right? Sometimes there are a lot of things that we hear and we learned, and while we were listening, it sounded right, it sounded like that, and then you go afterwards, you say, oh wow, what an inspiring class. Yeah, oh, what did he say? I don't know, good stuff. It was right, because it didn't, you didn't work it through and really get it and really have it settled in one's mind. So when the Makabel does do that, and afterwards, when he starts analyzing in exact detail, going into the exact details of the subject matter, and in the choices of words, and he actually works hard. He exerts himself in this, based on what he received in a revealed form. What based on what I already know, now I can use that to delve deeper into what was said, into the subjects that were covered, and the points that were made, and the words that were used. I can go in deeper based on what I now know in a revealed way. I can now start to dig deeper into what's hidden from it. So when he does that, when he does that, or at least it's a process. Chazal described the process taking 40 years. Hasidim have a tradition that the Alter Rebbe was by the Mizritch and Magid, and he got it right away. But the point is, he was also a Neshama Chadash and Neshama Datzos, but the idea is that there's a process, and through this process, he can actually come to the innermost depths of his intent, and the essential wisdom as it is by him, as it is by the Rav, literally the way he has it, to get it the way the Rav himself had it, before he started condensing it and constricting it, and in order to be able to bring it down and give it over. And similarly, he also is able to see the innermost depth of his wisdom in the Mishalim also. All of it exactly like by the Rav himself. Which is to say, if he understands well the nimshal based on the mashal, the hainu shemi prati emek hamashal, hariyu bolu prati emek hanimshal, b'pnimis hakavana shabei, which is that in the details of the depth of the mashal, he's digging and digging into every detail, that helps him get to the details of the depth of the nimshal, in the pnimis hakavana shabei, in the innermost intent in the of the nimshal of what is being said and what is being conveyed, as it is in its fullest depth, and ultimately taking it all the way to its ultimate understanding. Then now all the details of the nimshal are luminous, are illuminated, lit up for him. They are mashal, through the mashal. Then he too was able to see and feel the godly Inyan with his senses, literally on a sensory level, as mentioned before. So Ella, by the mashpia, the way it works is in a way of a direct light. First, he knows the depth of the nimshal, the thing that is going to be explained by the example, analogy, and so on. And he draws it down and he dresses it up in the mashal, in the analogy that he's giving. And through that, then he gets the mashpia. So he started from pure abstract, then he dressed it up in a mashal. And through that, he gets to now he gets to that he sees the idea in a tangible, solid form. So from him, it started from purely abstract, and he brought it down, all the way till the most concrete form, as it is in the mashal.
Kaimin V'yodaita the Rabbi is when the Talmud sees it in the mashal. In the mashal, he sees the next.
He says that's the next step.
Kaimin V'yodaita
means the next
he sees
step.
the das.
He sees the idea of
he sees the way the
where the Rebbe is coming. And which a lot to bring about, because it's a whole thing by the Rebbe starting from Tavshin Nun of Achabayim Shnin. And it continued in Tafshin and Aleph and Beis, that was a thing. So, but yeah, it's a very important idea to really have a handle on. And he says the difference is that by the Mashpia, it's in a way of Yashar, what's called a straight light. It starts from pure light and comes down and becomes more concrete to be able to communicate until it's actually in the physical, tangible reality. In the mashal itself, he sees the but by the Makabel, it's in a way of a retracting, reflected light. That through the mashal, which is the more tangible example, similarly, the external aspect of the seichel that was given over to him, that he was able to receive, he starts from the end and works his way back to the beginning. So that's called an Chayzer, where he's starting in the darkness at the end, but from the little bit of light that he got, he's able to work his way back to the beginning. So that enables him to come to the depth, the innermost intent of what the Rebbe is communicating. Because the Yovan, from all this is understood, that this power of imposing limitation and concealment that the Mashpia has, this that he constricts and conceals his intellect in this shortened form, and with analogies, and the like, not just it's not a hesta amiti, as we said before, because the Makabel gets something, and the Mashpia has it all, even after it comes up. The Makabel is getting something. No, in fact, it's now accessible for the Makabel to get it all.
It just takes time for him to deconstruct it. And
exactly, that's exactly right. That's how Seichel works. If you really want to understand something, you have to be able to take it step by step. So, because it doesn't conceal, in truth, it doesn't conceal at all. There's no, it's just a process, but it's not a concealment. It's because, in fact, the Mekabel receives through this Hashpah the entire depth, innermost depth of the depth of the innermost intent of the Rab. If that's the case, it's not a concealment. So why did we get involved in concealment at all? If it's not a concealment, so skip the whole concealment part. If it's all Giloy, so why do we have to go? Ella shapulas hahestu sheyuchal mekabel lekabel. The pool of the Hester was, what did it accomplish? What is it supposed to achieve? Is that it make it possible for the Mekabel to receive it. Because if not for the concealment, meaning that he would reveal to him the Seichel as it is by him, the senses of the Mekabel would become completely confused. It would not be able to receive at all. Be completely overwhelmed and confused. You will not be able to receive at all. Even the Chetzenis of Yisrael will not be able to receive. Because it would be just too much for him. And certainly he would not have been able to receive the innermost intent by the Helen Vahesta through the concealment and the hiddenness. This causes that at least is revealed to him the light of the Chetzenis HaSeichel, Ubagam came, and ultimately over time he will also come El Emek Primis Kavonas Harav Kana Chule Kana. So when Nimtza comes out, she has to show Mashpia and has to Amit Diklal Adad Kol Yonu Legals. It comes out that this co-concealment process that the Mashpia is doing all the concealment. The Mekabel is not doing any concealment. The Mekabel is just whatever you give me. So all the concealment is coming from the mashpia. So this whole concealment process that the mashpia is carrying out, has to meet the klal. It's entirely for the purpose of revealing. Nobody's interested in concealing anything.
You wouldn't get it otherwise.
Right? Nobody's interested in concealing anything. The concealment process is only in order to reveal. As he brings the light of the sechel mashpia, even the innermost and essence of his wisdom, to a place that's much lower. That even in that place should shine forth and should be revealed the light of the mashpia. Makabel cotton, which in this case is a makabel cotton, a recipient with a small and limited capacity, that is not on a relative level to the mashpia at all. That gamhu yavim v'yasik era mashpia, that he should also understand and grasp the light of the mashpia. Ultimately, gam aimek pnimis atzmis chachmasachum. Also, the depth of the innermost and essential aspect of his wisdom, as it is by him. V'nimtza be'emes ein zehalim v'es klal. Kilum adraba mevis erev madrega shemimatu mimenu chule kanal. Comes out that in truth, this is not a cover-up or concealment at all. In fact, to the contrary, the opposite is true. Its whole purpose is to bring the light to a level that's lower than him, that's lower than it, as mentioned before. And now we're up to where he's going to continue and explain how all this works up above in Elikus L'mayla. Okay? It's a big video.
For bringing.
As a session.